Okay, so the President of the United States just threatened to wipe out, and I'm quoting here, a whole civilization, one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. And when a senator tried to get the Senate to officially say, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk like that, it got voted down along party lines in a Commerce Committee. A Commerce Committee. So this past week, the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee held a markup, and Senator Ed Markey introduced an amendment to condemn Trump's rhetoric on Iran. Senator Ted Cruz, chairing the hearing, shut it down, called it out of jurisdiction, defended the president, and then went on a full history lecture about Iran. This clip's about 6 minutes. Watch how Cruz pivots from procedure to propaganda in real time, and pay close attention to the vote at the end. If you're not subscribed, hit that button now so you don't miss the breakdown after. Let's get into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, during the congressional recess, President Donald Trump leveled an unconstitutional threat against Iran and its 90 million residents. The president threatened that, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, and spoke openly about destroying key civilian infrastructure and unleashing devastation across Iran. This rhetoric is not strength or leadership. It is an anti-American statement that betrays our values and undermines the moral standing of the United States. Every member of Congress, including every member of this committee, has a moral obligation to reject this unconscionable rhetoric. My amendment would do just that. It condemns President Trump's threat in the strongest possible terms as morally repugnant. You cannot publicly say in the name of the American people that a whole civilization will die tonight. It is repugnant to and contrary to the values of the people of the United States and unbecoming to the office of the president. So I recognize that this type of amendment is not typically within the jurisdiction of the Senate Commerce Committee, but when the president makes appalling threats against 90 million people, this committee should not act as if it's business as usual. At a bare minimum, we must unequivocally condemn these threats. If we fail to speak out against rhetoric that casually invokes the annihilation of tens of millions of civilians, then we are abandoning the very principles we claim to defend. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment.
Well, thank you, Senator Markey. You rightly noted that this amendment is not within the jurisdiction of this committee. I will also observe that this modified amendment was not timely filed. It is not a technical correction to a filed amendment. In the original Markey 3 was an immigration amendment. Now it is an Iran amendment. And look, let me say on the substance, and we're going to vote on your amendment momentarily. On the substance, it used to be the case that politics ended at the water's edge. That when we were in a military conflict, Democrats and Republicans would fight like cats and dogs, but we'd say, you know what, we all stand together behind the servicemen and women who are fighting for America. We stand for our national security. I will say, unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. Our colleagues on the Democrat side, they cannot stand Donald J. Trump, so much so that the fact that they are standing up, we are right now standing up to Iran, engaged in a military conflict that I think is the single most consequential decision of President Trump's presidency, has driven virtually every Democrat nuts. That's unfortunate. Senator Markey said, I forget his exact language, but something to the effect of it's unconscionable to call for the death of a civilization. Well, for 47 years, the Ayatollah has screamed death to America and has led mobs chanting death to America. The Ayatollah has been waging, and there have been now multiple Ayatollahs, have been waging war against the United States for 47 years. The Islamic Revolution began by seizing our embassy in Iran, holding our hostages there for 444 days. The Iranian regime is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Hamas, which committed the horrific October 7th atrocities, 90%, more than 90% of Hamas's funding comes from Iran. More than 90% of Hezbollah's funding comes from Iran. More than 90% of the Houthis' funding come from Iran. Iran has killed nearly 1,000 Americans. And so I'm grateful that the president as commander-in-chief is standing up to a theocratic regime that has been murdering Americans for nearly 50 years. and is unequivocal in its stated desire to continue murdering Americans. And so I recognize there are genuine and heartfelt disagreements on this. But I wish we were living in a world where both sides would stand together and say, we're going to keep our partisan disagreements here at home. We're going to stand together united when servicemen and women are risking their lives. Unfortunately, that's not where we are. If there are no further discussion,
Roll call vote, right? Roll call vote.
the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Thune,
No by proxy.
Mr. Wicker,
No by proxy.
Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Moran, Mr. Sullivan, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Young, Mr. Budd, Mr. Schmidt,
No by proxy.
Mr. Curtis, Mr. Moreno, Mr. Sheehy, Mrs. Capito, Ms. Lummis, Ms. Cantwell,
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Schatz,
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Markey,
Aye.
Mr. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Baldwin,
Aye.
Ms. Duckworth, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Lujan,
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Hickenlooper,
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Fetterman,
No by proxy.
Mr. Kim,
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester,
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No.
The noes are 16, the yeses are 12.
The amendment is not agreed to. If there's no further discussion on the substantive bill, the question is on Senator Cantwell's motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion is agreed to, and the bill is ordered to be reported favorably.
All right, so let's talk about what you just watched, because there's a lot happening in that clip, and most of it has nothing to do with what anyone in that room actually has jurisdiction over. This is the Commerce Committee. They oversee things like broadband policy, shipping regulations, the FAA, and somehow they just spent their entire markup debating whether it's okay for the president to threaten to end a 2,500-year-old civilization. That's where we are. Now, Cruz's main argument was that Trump's language is just tough talk, that it's strategic pressure to force Iran to the table. But here's what Trump actually said. April 7th on Truth Social. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. That's not a negotiating tactic. Legal experts, including over 100 international law scholars, have said that targeting civilian infrastructure, bridges, power plants, water systems, constitutes a war crime under the Geneva Conventions and the Pentagon's own Law of War manual. Senator Elisa Slotkin, a former CIA analyst, called on service members to refuse illegal orders if given, and even some Republicans broke ranks. Senator Ron Johnson said he was hoping and praying it was bluster. Former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene called it evil and madness and demanded the 25th Amendment so Cruz can call it strength. But when your own side is calling it madness, maybe it's not strength. Maybe it's just reckless. Now Cruz spent a good chunk of time talking about Iran's proxy network, the funding, the terror groups, all of it. And look, he's not wrong about the facts there. So let's actually go through them because this part matters. Iran has been the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism since the U.S. designated it in 1984. According to State Department estimates, Iran funnels roughly $1 to $2 billion annually to proxy groups across the Middle East. Hezbollah alone receives an estimated $700 million to $1 billion per year. The Houthis get around $100 to $200 million in direct transfers, plus weapons. Hamas was receiving roughly $70 to $100 million annually before October 2023. These groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, they form what's called the Axis of Resistance, and they've been responsible for attacks on U.S. forces, Israeli civilians, and commercial shipping for decades. That is real. That is documented. Nobody serious disputes it. But here's where Cruz's argument falls apart. Acknowledging that Iran is a bad actor and that their proxies have killed Americans does not answer the question Markey was actually asking. Markey wasn't saying Iran is good. He wasn't saying we shouldn't confront them. He was saying that the President of the United States should not be publicly threatening to exterminate an entire civilization. Those are two completely different things. And Cruz treated them like they were the same thing because conflating the two is the only way to avoid the actual question. And here's something Cruz conveniently skipped. There used to be a tradition in American politics, a real one, not a talking point, that partisan politics stops at the water's edge. It meant that when it came to foreign policy and national security, you present a united front. You don't use military conflicts to score points on the other party. Cruz actually referenced this tradition in the hearing. He accused Democrats of breaking it. But think about that for a second. The president threatened to destroy a civilization on social media, and when a senator introduced an amendment saying maybe that language is beneath us, Cruz called that the partisan move, not the threat, the response to the threat. That's the thing that broke the tradition, apparently. And then there's the procedural part, which honestly might be the most telling detail of the whole thing. Cruz ruled Markey's amendment out of order, said it didn't belong in the Commerce Committee. And procedurally, you know what, he might even have a point. Foreign policy amendments in a commerce markup is unusual. But here's why Democrats are doing it. Because Republicans control the floor schedule. They control the Foreign Relations Committee. They control armed services. And they have blocked every single attempt to hold hearings on the Iran war. 3 war powers resolutions have failed in the Senate, all along party lines. Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote yes. So when every normal channel is shut down, you use the channels that are left. That's not obstruction. That's the minority party doing the only thing it can do, which is force people to go on record. And that's exactly what the vote did. 16 nays, 12 yays. Party line. Every single Republican on that committee voted that they were fine with the president threatening to end a civilization. That's not a secret ballot. That's a receipt. And every one of those senators is going to have to answer for that vote when the footage from this war keeps coming in. Now let me give you the 47-year history Cruz was referencing, because he's leaning on it hard and it does deserve context. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has been openly hostile to the United States. The hostage crisis, 444 days. State-sponsored chants of death to America for nearly half a century. The IRGC's Quds Force has trained, armed, and funded militias across the region. American service members have been killed by Iranian-backed groups in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria. That history is real and it's brutal. No one should minimize it. But here's the thing Cruz doesn't say. Confronting a dangerous regime and threatening to annihilate 90 million civilians are not the same policy. Every president since Carter has dealt with Iran. Sanctions, covert operations, diplomacy, military strikes. All of it. Not one of them, not Reagan, not Bush, not Obama, not even Trump in his first term, publicly threatened to wipe out an entire civilization on social media and then set an 8 p.m. deadline like it's a parking ticket. That's not strength. That's not strategy. That is a man with a Truth Social account and nuclear codes, and if that doesn't concern you, I genuinely don't know what would. And let's talk about the actual cost of this war right now, because Cruz didn't mention any of this. 6 American soldiers are already dead. Over 2,000 Iranian civilians have been killed in strikes that have hit schools, residential buildings, and medical facilities. The Strait of Hormuz has been blockaded, sending gas prices through the roof. The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimates the war has already cost nearly $30 billion. American households are paying an estimated $92 more just in fuel costs, and Congress hasn't authorized any of it. Not a single vote. Not a single hearing in the committees that are supposed to oversee military operations. So here's what actually happened in that room. A senator said the president's language was dangerous and un-American. Another senator said no, Iran is bad, as if those two things can't both be true at the same time. And then they voted along party lines to make sure nobody had to go on record saying the president went too far. That's not national security. That's a protection racket with a gavel. And I want to be crystal clear about something. You can believe Iran is a threat and still believe a president shouldn't threaten genocide on social media. You can support a strong military posture and still demand that Congress do its constitutional job of authorizing war. You can want the regime gone and still care about the 90 million civilians who didn't choose it. These are not contradictions. They're the bare minimum of what a functioning democracy is supposed to look like. So here's the line. If someone brings this up, here's what you tell them. The president threatened to end a civilization. A senator tried to condemn the language. It got voted down in a Commerce Committee along party lines. Congress still hasn't authorized the war. 6 Americans are dead. Thousands of Iranian civilians are dead. And the only thing that passed that committee was silence. That's not partisanship stopping at the water's edge. That's partisanship drowning in it. If this helped you see what's actually happening, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs the full picture, and I'll see you in the next one.